So if you were to drop a modern English speaker right into the middle of London in the year 900, it would be, well, it'd be a disaster.
Oh, absolutely. They wouldn't understand a single sentence.
Right. The cadence would sound completely alien. I mean, the
Like,
vocabulary would be totally unrecognizable. You'd probably just assume you got transported to like a different country
yeah,
entirely.
you would definitely think you were somewhere in Scandinavia or Germany.
Exactly. Except, strangely, if a local farmer, pointed at a cat drinking water in the sun, our modern time traveler would suddenly know exactly what was being said.
It's such a wild realization.
It really is. So today, our mission in this deep dive is to look at a fascinating set of sources detailing the enduring legacy of Old English.
Yeah.
We're looking for those specific everyday words, those ancient relics that are just, hiding in plain sight in our casual conversations.
Yeah, it's a really disorienting thought experiment for anyone who uses this language every day because, well, we tend to view modern English as this monolith of our own time.
Like we invented it yesterday.
Right, exactly. But language is this living, breathing archaeological record. Every time we speak, we are literally carrying forward the DNA of people who lived over 1,000 years ago.
It's like we're walking on an archaeological dig site, but all the most ancient artifacts are just lying around on the surface.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
Mm.
And the sources we're analyzing today, they don't just catalog what survived. They actually force us to look at the mechanics of linguistic survival.
The why behind it all.
Yes, we're exploring the specific everyday pressures that allowed certain words to endure while, thousands of others were just entirely erased.
Right. And since anyone familiar with the history of the English language already knows the basic timeline, we can just jump right into the math of the situation.
Right, do it.
So we know Old English dominated from the 5th to the 11th century. And we know the Norman conquest of 1066 was the cataclysmic event that basically ended that era.
It was a massive disruption.
Oh, huge. The French-speaking Normans took over the government, the courts, the military, the aristocracy. It was this massive linguistic wipeout that kicked off the Middle English period.
But despite all that, there's a statistic in the sources that it seems mathematically impossible.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I read that and was totally blown away.
Yeah, so it's estimated that more than 50% of the most frequently used words in Old English still exist in some form in contemporary English.
Over half. I mean, how does a conquering force fundamentally rewire an entire society, yet fail to overwrite the core vocabulary? Is Old English basically the linguistic equivalent of the foundation of a completely renovated house?
Like they tore it down to the studs.
Yeah, like the outside looks totally different because of the French remodel in 1066, but the load-bearing walls are exactly the same.
What's fascinating here is that you really hit the nail on the head. It comes down to structural necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about how a language actually functions in the physical world.
The day-to-day grind.
Exactly. The Norman conquest was this flashy, massive renovation. The new French ruling class added, elaborate balconies, expensive chandeliers, put on a totally new roof.
Right, all the fancy stuff.
All of it. The words relating to high society, law, cuisine, the military, those were all replaced by French terms. But the words that survived, that 50%, those are those load-bearing walls you mentioned.
One's holding the whole house up.
Precisely. They do the heavy lifting every single day. We're talking about pronouns, basic prepositions, the nouns and verbs you need just for fundamental survival.
So the kings and queens change how they talk, but the everyday person doesn't care.
Right. The aristocracy changes its tune overnight. But the vast majority of the population, the people just trying to navigate their daily existence in the mud, they have this profound linguistic stubbornness.
They're too busy to learn French.
Exactly. Their core vocabulary is just too necessary. It's used too frequently to be replaced by the sophisticated decrees of some distant court.
The frequency of use basically creates a suit of armor for those words. But the sources do bring up a really major caveat to this survival rate.
Yes, the survival of meaning.
Right, because just physical survival of a word, the fact that a string of letters makes it across 1,000 years, that does not mean its meaning survived.
It's the phenomenon of the false friends.
False friends. Sounds ominous.
It's one of the most dangerous traps for anyone studying historical texts.
Yeah.
Just because a word looks identical on the page to a modern reader, you absolutely cannot assume it's doing the same job it did a millennium ago.
And the sources give us this brilliant example with the word rice.
Oh, this is a great one.
Yeah. So if I say rice to you today, or to anyone listening, a very specific image pops into your head. A cereal grain. You boil it for 20 minutes, it's a side dish.
Right. It's food.
But in Old English, the sources indicated had absolutely nothing to do with food.
Not even remotely related to agriculture.
As a noun, rice meant a kingdom, and as an adjective, it was used to mean powerful.
Quite the departure from a tiny white grain.
I mean, seriously, so if I traveled back to the 9th century and asked for a bowl of rice, I'd essentially be asking for a bowl of kingdom or power.
You'd definitely get some very strange looks from the innkeeper.
It's like linguistic identity theft. The word is wearing the exact same clothes, but it's doing a completely different job. How does a concept as grand as a kingdom shrink down into a grain over the centuries?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it isn't really a shrinking. It's more like a complete hijacking of phonetic real estate.
Phonetic real estate, I like that.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is semantic drift combined with that influx of foreign vocabulary we talked about. Following the Norman conquest, the French brought in their own words for power and domains.
Right, the high status words?
Exactly. Words like realm, royalty, sovereignty, they completely dominated the political sphere. So the Old English noun rice lost its status.
It basically got laid off.
It did. It was pushed out by the new management. So the sound rice was suddenly unemployed, just floating around in the cultural ether without a strong definition attached to it.
Oh, wow. And then centuries later, a new agricultural import shows up.
Right. A specific grain from the East makes its way into the European diet, and it needs a name.
So through this long chain of borrowing from Greek and Old French, it morphs into the Middle English spelling and sound we recognize as rice.
It was a total coincidence. The new grain didn't evolve from the Old Kingdom. It just moved into the empty house that the old word abandoned.
That is just wild. Semantic drift is a natural part of language evolution, but seeing it like that is crazy. We're essentially just recycling sounds.
Constantly.
But having established that meanings can change so easily, like with rice, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, the words that refuse to change.
Right. The deep dive moves into the specific categories of words that stubbornly resisted all of this, starting with our environment.
The literal ground we walk on.
Exactly. The sources highlight this category of natural world words that fought off the French Renovation and the semantic drift. And looking at them on the page, they are shockingly recognizable, like water.
Yes, waiter. It barely changed.
Right. The sources say it was spelled W-A-E-T-E-R.
Yeah, the pronunciation had a slightly different physical quality to it. An Old English speaker would open their mouth a bit wider, feeling that Germanic root in the back of the throat. Waiter?
Waiter, that's so close. And the sky above them was just as constant. The sun.
Sun?
Yeah, originally spelled with a double N and an E on the end, but the root is completely identical. Then we have night and day.
Right, night and Doug.
Night acquired a G in the middle over the centuries, but night to night is a direct line. Same with day to day.
With night, they were utilizing a harsh, breathy, fricative sound in the middle, like the CH in lock. Night.
Wow, I see.
But over centuries, we grew lazier and smoothed out those harsh sounds, leaving us with the modern night. But the lineage is unbroken.
Even our physical experience of the environment survived. The sources mention the word cool, referring to colder temperatures.
Pre-conquest England used it with the exact same meaning, spelled C-O, with a line over it, del el cur.
Cool. So we have water, sun, night, day, cool. Why did the natural world survive the Norman conquest's linguistic wipeout?
That is the core question.
Is it simply because kings and conquerors change, but the water and the sun are everyday human constants that just don't care who sits on the throne?
That's entirely it. You have to analyze the lived physical reality of the 6th or 9th century.
Which was mostly farming, right?
Vastly agrarian.
Right.
Their entire survival, their literal life or death calculus every single day depended on the weather, the cycle of day and night, the water in the soil, the temperature.
They're elemental. You can't escape them.
Right. When William the Conqueror arrives in 1066, he builds castles, he dictates the language of the courts, he changes tax terminology.
But he can't legislate the weather?
He cannot. And the French ruling class isolated themselves in their keeps. They had absolutely no reason to go down into the mud and discuss the morning frost with the English peasantry.
So that social isolation created a sort of linguistic preservation zone.
Exactly. Everyday elemental human experiences formed the bedrock of daily communication. The English farmer kept looking up at the sun and feeling the cold air, totally untouched by top-down decrees.
It makes those words highly resistant to change. That's amazing.
It proves that while political structures are fragile, human interaction with nature is permanent.
Okay, so transitioning from the external natural environment, the sources also track this into the personal, domestic sphere.
Hmm.
The companions and the quirks that have lived with us for over a millennium.
The psychological constants, really.
Yeah, and this gets surprisingly personal. Beyond just the elements, the sources point out the survival of our feline friends. The cat,
Cats.
right, spelled with a double T, or sometimes an E on the end, but remarkably similar to today. We've been hanging out with cats through plague, conquest, and revolution.
It applies the same logic as the agrarian vocabulary. The cat was a permanent fixture by the hearth,
They were pest control.
crucial domestic technology. The French nobility brought over fancy hunting dogs, but the working-class cat remained an English institution.
I love that. And that endurance extends to human bonds, too, enduring like friendship itself, the word friend.
Friend.
Yes, originally L-R-E-O-N-D. The spelling is slightly different, but the core identity survived the wipeout.
Because companionship is just as fundamental to psychological survival as water is to physical survival. A new king might take your land, but he can't rename your community.
So true. But amidst all this logical survival, the sources highlight a structural quirk that feels totally illogical.
The evolution of the word often.
Yes, the word oft. Wait, language usually gets lazier and more abbreviated over time, right?
Generally, yes. We seek linguistic economy.
Right, like son drops letters to become son. But often is a rare example of a modern word being longer than its Old English ancestor.
Which was simply oft. O-F-T.
Used exactly the same way. So why would oft gain an N to become often? Did we just decide the original was too short?
This raises an important question because it is so rare. To understand it, we have to look past culture and examine purely mechanical reasons. A mechanism called epenthesis.
Epenthesis. Okay, what is that?
It's the addition of one or more sounds to a word, usually just to make it physically easier to pronounce in a flowing sentence.
So it's about the physical movement of the mouth.
Entirely. Think about the consonant cluster at the end of oft. The F and the T require a very specific hard stop of airflow.
Okay, yeah.
Now, try saying the phrase, I oft go, really quickly.
So, oh, wow, you literally have to stop your breath between the T and the G. It's jarring.
It's mechanically disruptive. So over generations, the human tongue rebelled. Speakers inserted a tiny unstressed vowel sound and a nasal consonant to bridge that gap.
I often go.
Exactly. The N acts as a phonetic lubricant.
Wow. It grew an extra limb just to make speaking physically easier.
It contrasts beautifully with the standard streamlining of words like cat and friend.
So what does this all mean? If we recap the journey for you listening, we went from the 5th century origins through the 1066 Norman conquest wipeout all the way to today.
It's a journey of profound resilience.
We looked at the misunderstood rice, which got hijacked by semantic drift. But then we saw the elemental endurance of wetter, call, friend, and cat.
And even the mechanical quirk of often.
Right. The load-bearing walls held firm.
They absolutely did.
Yeah.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. We're currently living in an era of hyper-accelerated linguistic invention, right?
Oh, totally. Tech jargon everywhere.
Exactly. But if the words that survived a millennium of language evolution, French conquests, and modern technology are the ones tied strictly to nature and basic human connection.
Like water, sun, friends, and cats.
Right. What does that say about the highly technical vocabulary we're inventing today? Will our modern jargon simply disappear, while humans 1,000 years from now are still just hanging out with their cat in the sun?
Oh, wow. That is such a humbling thought to leave on. The servers crash, but the cats stay. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources today. As you go about your day, pay attention to the ancient history hiding in your own conversations. You're speaking a lot more Old English than you ever realized.